Welcome to the Hey Mama Homeschool Show, centered around family life and home education. How do you get homeschooling and housework done? How do you help children who are struggling? How do you teach a rebellious child? We have answers. You pour into your family daily, and we are here to help you. Brought to you by the Old Schoolhouse, your trusted partner for over 20 years. Hello, and welcome again to the Hey Mama Homeschool Show podcast. Today, we are talking about finding rest in spirit, soul, and body. Finding rest as a busy homeschool parent can sometimes be a challenge. So let's talk about that today. First of all, I want to mention our sponsor today. It's Reading Eggs. With Reading Eggs, your homeschoolers will enjoy a highly personalized learning journey designed to support them at every stage. Plus, you'll get 4 programs in one with your subscription: Reading Eggs, Reading Eggspress, Reading Eggs Junior, and Fast Phonics. So, finding rest. That almost makes me laugh because looking back over my homeschooling career, and I do consider it a career, is there are many times, many seasons where I struggled to find rest. Because it's a busy season when you're raising little ones, isn't it? It's busy even when they grow older. It's busy, and it doesn't stop being busy when they when they are teens, because all of a sudden you're driving them a lot of different places and you're their taxi and there's things going on. And when I had teens, I also had babies. And so it was a never-ending cycle of trying to find rest. And so for homeschool moms, it can be a challenge, but I have found so much help actually in the Old Schoolhouse magazine. And I was looking back at some articles that have come in and come through publication in the magazine. And there are some very interesting articles on how to find rest while you are homeschooling. And I want to just share a few of those with you and just some highlights from some of those to maybe give us some help, right? So the first one I remembered when I saw this topic was one that I had written in May of 2012. And yes, that's quite a few years ago. But I remember writing it because, I was struggling to find a place of refreshment, a place where I wasn't tired. And how did I get past tired and get back into the work that I was called to do? And so I'm just going to read just a couple of things from this article and share that with you. And you can always find any of these articles that I mention. You just go to homeschoolapp.com, which will give you the free app for your smart device, or you can use the browser on your computer, and you would go to tosmagazine.com, and it will always bring up the most recent issue. However, if you want to look at back issues and you want to just look up any topic at all, you go to the search engine that is in there, both on your apps and in your browser, and it's called the issue library. You'll see a little button, I believe, on the left-hand side that will be called the issue library. And that's where it brings up all the issues we've ever done digitally. And you can type in any topic or subject, or just the month or year of the issue. So this one called "Why Am I So Tired?" comes from our May 2012 issue. And I'm just going to read a little bit. It says, I'm not alone in this tired feeling. I hear it all the time, don't you? Why am I so tired? I know you have been or will be tired too. The problem with tiredness is that sometimes it skews our vision and makes us want to quit. Isn't that true? I'm just sidetracking here a minute. So true. We want to throw in the towel because this homeschooling can be taxing on our spirit, soul, and body. I'm going on. However, I have found that if we give up, we will still be tired, but we will also have added guilt to our burden. And we don't need to be tired and guilty, right? So, when I wrote this article, it says I was in my 49th year of life, and I was still chasing a 3-year-old. And yes, his 7 siblings as well. So no wonder I was tired, right? But I was asking myself, how do I get past tired and get back into the work that I'm called to do? And I gave just a few hints on that, but I also brought up the story of Elijah, and I love it. It's a true story in history about a great saint of God who wanted to call it, he wanted to quit. That's what he wanted to do. And we're going to look at how tiredness played a role in that decision. And this is in 1 Kings 18 and 19, and we see a strong man of God named Elijah. And he was one to be feared because he represented the true and living God at that time. He was the prophet at the time, and he performed mighty wonders on God's behalf. And people came from miles to see him and hear from him. He is the one who prayed and the rain stopped for years. And then he prayed and it started, right? Remember that? And then he's the man who showed the greatness of God and the foolishness of the prophets of Baal in that magnificent presentation on Mount Carmel. And remember his prayer at that time. Let me just read that. It's in 1 Kings 18, 37 through 40 says, "Hear me, O Lord, hear me, that this people may know that thou art the Lord God, and that thou hast turned their heart back again. Then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt sacrifice, and the wood, and the stones, and the dust, and licked up the water that was in the trench. And when all of the people saw it, they fell on their faces and said, The Lord, He is the God. The Lord, He is the God." In other words, they saw this mighty representation of God being bigger and mightier than the prophets of Baal. And so they were just amazed at this presentation that just happened. But here's what happened just after Elijah watched God do that and show up in that consuming fire. And he saw the people, they turned from their idolatry to the one true God. He literally ran away and asked to die. But he had just seen the miraculous intervention of God. And yet he was in his humanity, he just ran away and asked to die because someone was chasing after him. One of the king's wife wanted him dead. And so anyways, his enemies were destroyed, eyes were opened to who God was, all kinds of things, right? But here's Elijah. He decides to call it quits. And it says that right here in 2 Kings chapter 19. He says, "And when he saw that, he rose and went for his life. And he came to Beersheba, which belonged to Judah, and he left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, and he came and sat down under a juniper tree. And he requested for himself that he might die. And he said, It is enough. It is enough. Now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am not better than my fathers." Here's a man who just saw the amazing miracle of God and just ran for his life and said, I'm done. So why would Elijah turn from complete and total faith in his mighty God to the utter distress of coming to the point of desiring death? And I think it's just the human condition here. Sometimes we see God do great things in our families and in us, and then some crisis comes and we seem to want to quit. We want to wilt down. We want to just give up. So in this article, it says, I can really relate to Elijah's tired faith and extremely short memory, because when I look carefully at his story, I see my own story unfold. And here's how I saw it. Number one, he's physically tired. He had a huge presentation and he had a long marathon. And I am easily tired by my never-ending to-do list and children that are needy and that need me, and things that need to happen in my home and in my schooling, and things that just never end. Second, even after a victory, he realized he had to continue going strong. And I also must keep fighting for the souls of my children. And number three, he believes he's the only one not bowing the knee to other gods. I sometimes feel alone. In my career of homeschooling, sometimes I felt alone in not bowing the knee to public education and to the God of education, the worldly secular God of education. And sometimes you feel alone in that. And then number four, he becomes depressed and says he's no better than his faithless fathers. And sometimes I compare myself with others and come up dissatisfied with who I am. And number five, tiredness led him to an attitude of defeat. He says, it is enough. And I also go from being tired to saying, that's enough. And what was God's response to Elijah? Was God disappointed in Elijah? No, he understood Elijah's humanity. Going back to Elijah's story, when he was at his lowest point, God intervened in several ways. God was near Elijah in these ways. He brought Elijah food and he told him to sleep. God knew what Elijah needed. Elijah was tired, and God said, sleep. He brought him food and told him to sleep. Doesn't that sound like a wonderful help for us too? Sometimes we just need to eat and sleep, and then we're good. And not only did God give him food and rest, but he also gave Elijah strength for the journey that was to come, and gave him strength actually to go another 40, I think it was 40 days again. And then God showed Elijah his glory there and spoke to him. There's so many things in this story where God was just compassionate upon Elijah, even in his place of saying, I am so tired, I just want to quit. God just came and spoke and stayed with him. And he assured Elijah that thousands of others had not given up. And finally, God gave Elijah specific direction, and he sent him help. He actually sent him a helper. He sent him Elisha to help him. And so, I have known God to rescue me in the same ways that he rescued Elijah. Some days I just needed extra sleep physically, and I needed to just have a restful day. And then a time of refreshment, and then I could stand up again with the right perspective. I needed to eat not only physical food, but God's word and worship him. And when I remember that he is great and he does great things, and I engage in that quiet conversation between God and me and man, then it assures me that I'm not alone. And I've been given direction and help. And that really pulls me out of that I really want to quit mode into, okay, I can go another day in the strength of the Lord. So that was just a little bit from that article. I don't want to spend too much time on this one because there's so many others, articles all based on weary homeschool moms and getting rest. And so the next one I want to talk about real quick is from February 2013, and it's 16 Mistakes That Weary Homeschool Moms Make by Melanie Wilson. And she talks about a time in her life where, baby doesn't stop crying and the toddler is fighting with the preschooler, and the second grader refuses to work on anything without you, and the fourth grader is asking permission to go to the bathroom. And you're late. She says you're late getting your sixth grader to dance class, and your husband calls and wants to know what's for dinner. I mean, I have lived those kind of days, I'm telling you, where you just want to go back to bed. Or they're the days that you just lash out in anger, or you dissolve into tears. And you kind of wonder why you ever thought homeschooling was a good idea. Well, every mom, this article says every homeschool mom has times when she's weary of it all. Um, even on the good days, you can be weary, but the grace of God gets us through. And those kind of days usually pass, and then there are days where it's just a joyful time. But she brings up 16 mistakes that weary homeschool moms make. I'm only going to talk about a couple of them. One of them, she says, is neglecting devotional time. And of course, that will be like the number one reason that we become overwhelmed, because we become self-sufficient Christians, which means that we're trying to do things in our own strength, which immediately we're going to fall on our face. We're not designed to do things in our own strength. Secondly, one of the others, let's see, she says keeping an erratic sleep schedule that can cause us, if we not get enough sleep, it can cause immune suppression and irritability and poor functioning and all these things. And she recommends using an alarm to remind yourself to go to bed on time. She talks about too many outside activities that steal our rest, or unrealistic school schedules that, we have this huge schedule for us and our kids that in real life is really not going to be able to be performed. And so we need to be flexible with our schedule, be simple with our schedule, and find the margin we need for our days. And she says, if you abandoning your routine can sometimes cause you to want to quit. So we need to have structure and, again, be flexible. We don't want to plunge into chaos. So we want to keep our basic routines intact, but at the same time, adopt a more relaxed attitude so that you and your children feel less pressure. And I think we, as homeschool moms, this is me talking, that we put a lot of pressure on ourselves and our kids, especially when we're first starting, because we are taking on the burden, this huge burden of educating our children. And really, really, we need to relax in that and know that God is blessing the fact that we've brought our kids home, and He will give us what we need. He'll fill in all the gaps. He'll give us wisdom for our days and our curriculum and our children, and we can feel less pressure. We don't need to take on the pressure of the world. We just need to take on the obedience to God for what He's called us to do. She talks about getting your children to do chores. She talks about planning ahead for meals and outside responsibilities. So many ways. So she has 16 different ways here to help the weary homeschool mom. And again, that's in our February 2013 issue. And another one in that February issue, let me see, it was called Overcoming Hurdles. Overcoming Hurdles. And I just wanted to pull out one of the hurdles that this talks about, and it's the hurdle of weariness and burnout. So let me just read that little portion. It says, lack of motivation accompanies burnout, just as lack of sleep or peace accompanies lack of motivation. It's a vicious cycle made worse by added guilt because we're not getting this stuff done. We've been running hard, but now there's a brick wall of burnout that we must jump over. And we are sometimes tired of the same old routine. And so it says here to leap over that hurdle by changing up the routine. So here it talks about do what you enjoy. What's a favorite subject for all of you? Do more of that. have a day where your kids can just do only half of their schoolwork and give them joy in that. Not only will they be happy, but you'll be happy to have some extra time on your plate. Try a new way of teaching, implement that unit study that you wanted to try. Just change things up, and sometimes that gives you the refreshment that you need to continue going. And leap over the hurdle of weariness with the discipline of rest. So sometimes rest is internal because, again, we're putting too much pressure on ourselves. And so we need internal rest and we need external rest. And of course, we find that rest in Jesus Christ. And he says in Matthew 11:28-30, we know this one by heart. It says, "Come to me, those who are weary, and I will give you rest." And he goes on to say how you find that. He says, learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly of heart, and you will find rest for your souls. So something about being gentle and lowly and learning from him will bring rest to our heart, to our home, and to our homeschool. Let's see, the scripture is brought up in here in Isaiah 40:31. How those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. So when your strength needs to be renewed, wait upon the Lord, sit in his presence. And then it says, you will mount up with wings as eagles. You can run and not be weary. You can walk and not faint. This is how? By waiting upon the Lord, sitting in his presence, meditating in his word. This will give you that renewed strength. So that was another article called Overcoming Hurdles. And then let me see, maybe one or two more real quick. One is from winter 2020. And the winter 2020 article is called The Beauty of Restful Homeschooling. This author, Danielle Poorman, she said, I realized there was a missing ingredient to the success of our homeschool. And she was talking about when she first started homeschooling, she was eager, but things began to not be restful. In other words, she thought that homeschooling was bringing school home. And so in that thought, the thought of homeschooling her children created anxiety within her. So the Lord had other plans, though, she says, and 4 years later, after deciding to homeschool, she realized that the missing ingredient to the success of her homeschool was trying to do traditional school at home, but learning that they needed to slow down. She was forcing education into their lives rather than embracing education as life itself. This is a very good way to slow down and to change perspective, that all of our days and all of our hours are learning. And so the question is, what are we teaching during these 24 hours that we have? And are we trying to force a public school mentality into our homeschool, or are we taking every opportunity to use every curriculum and every outing and every nature experience as a learning experience for our kids? She said, now our days look restful. And one thing that really helped her, and I want to share that with you, is that what helped them to slow down all around, instead of doing all this curriculum with all these kids, one thing that helped them was to have a morning time together where they all came together for morning time. And let me tell you how that worked. She said she began each morning with a special morning time to read scripture, to sing, to memorize poems, to enjoy art, and to read aloud. And so that became their favorite part of their homeschool day. And so whenever it said that whenever they didn't have morning time, the children were telling her, Mom, this day seems strange because we didn't have our morning time. So a time that usually before this was chaotic and overwhelming, trying to get all the school subjects and the kids to, do their stuff, became a time for her children to curl up with their cocoa and muffins and listen to Mom read from their picture books. So she said it was a perfect way to start their day. And it created a restful atmosphere at the very beginning, and gave them that rest that they needed for their homeschooling, to have a more restful homeschooling. She said restful homeschooling does not mean you are not doing anything. It means you are approaching your days with an unhurried mindset that allows you to fully learn and enjoy it. You take time to savor the moments. She said, it's amazing how the Lord weaves beauty into the most challenging of circumstances, finding ways to calm anxiety and cultivate a love of learning has drawn us closer to God, and as a family, restful homeschooling has made that possible. So you can read the full article in the winter 2020 issue called The Beauty of Restful Homeschooling. And the last one I want to bring up is one from summer 2019. It's called The Remedy of Grace. And this was one that I had written when I had 5 young children. I was pregnant with my 6th. And I was thinking to myself, oh, this will be no problem. 6 will be a piece of cake. What's one more? I may be overwhelmed now, but I've gotten into a groove and I'm not insane yet. So guess what? My haughty spirit came before a fall. And so once that 6th child was born, it was not a piece of cake. It was more like a piece of rotting flesh. I just couldn't do it all. I needed help. I needed grace. So in the middle of one night, with my newborn crying in my arms, the toddler crying at my knees, and me crying out to the Lord, he reminded me of a hymn that sustained me and taught me what his grace is. And here's that hymn. It's called He Giveth More Grace. He giveth more grace when the burdens grow greater. He sendeth more strength when the labors increase. To added affliction, he addeth his mercy. To multiplied trials, his multiplied peace. When we have exhausted our store of endurance, when our strength has failed, ere the day is half done, when we reach the end of our hoarded resources, our Father's full giving is only begun. This is where our strength ends and his begins. We don't have our own strength. Such a relief to those of us who feel like we don't have the strength to continue on. It's his power, not ours. We can rest in his grace, that he gives more grace when our burdens are greater. In 2 Corinthians 12:9, it says, he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Again, 2 Corinthians 12:9. So maybe you have been brought to a place where life seems like more than you can handle, and you don't feel like you're sufficient to meet all the needs around you. You are in need of God's provision of grace, and it's an abundant provision. In 2 Corinthians 9:8, it says, and God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that in all things, at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. And it's about him. He asks us just to come boldly to his throne to receive his help and find grace in our time of need. What are we waiting for? So thank you for sharing this time with me as we talked about finding rest in spirit, soul, and body. And again, I find so much helpful information in the pages of the Old Schoolhouse magazine. you can just go to, again, tosmagazine.com, or you can get the free app at homeschoolapp.com. And also, our next few podcasts, we'll be talking, let's see, it's the holiday season coming up. And so we're going to be talking in the next few podcasts about homeschooling with educational toys and games. We're going to talk about preparing our heart and our home and our homeschool for Christ. And we'll have a special Christmas story as well. So stay tuned to our next several podcasts. And again, our sponsor today was Reading Eggs. With Reading Eggs, your homeschoolers will enjoy a highly personalized learning journey designed to support them at every stage. Plus, you'll get 4 programs in one with your subscription: Reading Eggs, Reading Eggspress, Reading Eggs Junior, and Fast Phonics. Well, thank you for joining me today. The Lord bless you. I pray the Lord will give you the rest that you need as you come to Him. God bless you.